We're here at Steve Sandifer's layout. It's the Howard branch of the Santa Fe. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about your railroad and what's its primary function? What do they haul here?
My room is fairly small as layouts go, and I wanted to model something that looked in place for a room this size. So I'm modeling the Santa Fe, Emporia, Kansas, and the Howard branch. My lower deck is the town of Emporia, just one town, and trains will come from staging to staging through Emporia, which has major yard industries along the main, etc., to keep people busy. The upper deck is parts of the Howard branch, including Eureka, Kansas, Climax, Kansas, and Moline, Kansas. And Moline is also on the South Kansas branch of the Santa Fe. So I have 7 staging tracks that feed the town of Moline. So also Eureka has a live interchange with the Missouri Pacific. So there's a staging track that does that. This is a operations-oriented layout. It is a switching layout. There are no long runs on this layout except maybe 50 feet getting through Emporia. But it keeps people very busy with operations, and that's what I enjoy. I'm modeling 1952 Santa Fe. I'm a prototype modeler, so I don't want any cars or locomotives on this track that wouldn't have been in operation in 1952 or 53. I fudged to get the Jeep 7s in there. Livestock is a big matter here. This is part of the Flint Hills of Kansas, which was very active in feeding livestock. So there are stock pens in every town, as well as a sizable feeding station in Emporia. Also, the rock quarry behind me was the busiest industry on the Howard branch and the South Kansas. So it provided a lot of rock that went all over Kansas and that area for construction. The other big product is grain. So we have a grain elevator here in Moline. There's one in Climax. There's 3 in Eureka. And then we have the large grain storage facilities in Emporia.
So Steve, you said that you operate. We were wondering if you could tell us, how many crew members and how does a session run?
My lower deck has been a product of the COVID quarantine. With the upper deck, I just use two men or one-man crews, and so I can keep 2 people busy on the upper deck for 3 to 4 hours without any problem. Once I get operations going on the lower deck, and I'm close, I think I'll have 4 or 5 crew members, and that excludes me. I will be I call it staging manager. I will sit at the door to the room and not really be in the room, but I have cameras and controls of all the staging tracks from there. And so I will bring trains up from staging to the edge of Emporia and let my crews take it from there. There'll be a lot of switching in the yard because it's a division point. So every train gets a new caboose, change crews. There are trains that come in from 3 directions on the east. They come from St. Joseph, Topeka, down to the edge of Emporia. They come from Kansas City into Emporia. The Howard branch comes in from that direction. And there's also interchanges that come up from Tulsa and Bartlesville into Tulsa. And then when they go out on the west, you have a line that goes up to Superior, Nebraska. You have the main line that goes to Newton, Dodge City, La Junta, and it splits there for Denver and Raton. You have what's called the Transcon now that goes down to Wellington, Amarillo, Clovis, Belen for the West Coast. And you have the line that goes down to Texas by way of Oklahoma City. So a lot of trains will come into the yard in Emporia, say cars coming from Texas that are headed to Denver, and they'll have to be switched out and moved around that way. So a lot of shuffling of trains will take place in the yard in Emporia. Plus there are the industries along the main, the largest of which is Kansas Soya, that was switched twice a day by Santa Fe, and before that the Katy, and it was a soybean processing mill of some size. The livestock feeding station in Emporia was the largest and most modern on the Santa Fe system. Of course, it'll be quite small on mine by comparison, but a lot of livestock came in here for feed, water, and rest, and some livestock was kept here for several weeks for feeding, sheep for shearing, before finally being taken to St. Joseph, Missouri, or to Kansas City for the processing there. This is the town of Eureka, Kansas, and there are really 2 scenic elements in it that are accurate for the town itself. The first is this depot area with its grain elevator, water tank, and depot. And the depot, by the way, still stands. It has been restored and is an engineering company's headquarters now. The other is my Missouri Pacific track, which comes in behind the scenery here. There's a staging track, and a 4-car train comes in from Kansas City on the Missouri Pacific. It services the industries on their line, also can interchange with the Santa Fe. Then it must turn, so you have to put the caboose on the other end and go back into staging. It's sort of a puzzle, and some people do it in 30, 40 minutes. Some people pull their hair out and quit, but it's a lot of fun. I do have on the upper deck 7 staging tracks behind the hill in Moline. They're open. to the top, and I have access through a back door. But they provide up to 7 trains to be able to come into Moline and provide cars for the upper deck. We have the Missouri Pacific here that is a short train but keeps people very busy. And then on the lower deck, I have 2 staging yards. Both of them are stub in. One has 9 tracks, one has 8 tracks. And there is a crossover where the two kind of come together. So restaging simply involves backing a train out of one track into an empty that's opposing it. And then shuffling the cards, of course, to go from there. One of the things that I like are my electromagnetic uncouplers. I make my own. They look like this when I make them. And they're simply wrapped wire and cut piece of steel. But I use electromagnetic uncouplers because I don't like slow-moving trains coming uncoupled, and houses are prone to shift and it changes the way. So this way you don't uncouple it unless you want it uncoupled. I found a little circuit board that I acquired from China. These cost me $1.50 and they're timer circuits. But that way I can push an uncoupling button. The uncoupler comes on, in my case, for 10 seconds. It energizes it. You have 10 seconds to work with, and then it's turned off. I also put a LED in the ballast work right where the uncoupler is. So when you turn on the uncoupler, the LED lights, and that tells you exactly where the uncoupler is located so that you can uncouple your train. Finally, I use some laser pointers, little pin pointers like you'd use with a cat. And I have some of those mounted in the bottom of my upper deck, shining down on the lower deck, so that if there are spots where you can't really see where the uncoupler is, it projects a little red light on the top of the cars above where that spot is, and allows you then to use the electromagnetic uncoupler on the lower deck.
How deep is the scenery on the upper deck?
Most of it is roughly 3 feet. Some of it is more. Because of the design of my layout, I did not want to have any duck unders. And if you're going to have a 30-inch radius curve, you have to have a 60-inch deep, 5-foot deep area for your return loop to be. And so I've got a little over 5 feet right here and a little over 5 feet over here where that balloon takes place.
And when it goes back behind there, I take it the staging back behind Moline is level, but over behind Eureka, that's a downgrade and it goes down to the next level?
Okay, all of the track on the upper deck and the lower deck is level. There's no grade at all. But how do you connect the upper deck to the lower deck? I didn't want to use a helix because a helix takes up so much space. So what I have is a ramp that's behind the scenery. When you make the corner down here, you start going down, and there's a trough that nobody seems to notice between the top deck and the wall. And that trough, about 3.5 inches wide, it's the width of a 2x4, starts down a 4% grade. And that 4% grade comes out at the far end of Emporia. So it goes down 24 inches and 50 feet. So that's a 4% grade. But as a result of having it this way, you don't have a helix to take up a huge amount of the railroad.
Yeah, it's a really good layout, really well designed. Well, thank you, Steve, for having us over and
Thank you.
having us feature your railroad. I'm sure that all the Santa Fe buffs will really enjoy your railroad.
Yes.
I know we did.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
work. Thank you.